peace song. And having sung it, I will also translate it in English. So for those of us who can actually speak P, who know what I'm saying. It's a very popular peace song, and that is tied to today's word. So please help me sing the song if you can. Yesu kamo, odi wachi. Yesu kamo, through your troubles and sufferings is with you. The earth will quake, the mountains will lift, and fall into the sea. Fear not, he is with you. Again, Jesus is with you. He goes before and behind you. Jesus is with you. Through your troubles and sufferings, the earth may quake, mountains may lift, and fall into the sea. Fear not, he is with you forever. That was the meaning of the song we just sang. In our world today, we have so many hopes, we have so many aspirations, we have so many dreams. And that makes us wake up each morning fired up and pumped up for the day. All in expectation for that anticipated hope and dream. Now, what happens to us if we lose control? What happens to us if everything that we hold dear is taken away from us? What happens if all our dreams seem to be dashed? What do we do? Where do we get our inspiration from? Do we just cave in and give up? Or do we believe in the trusting grace of God? Answers to this or these questions form an integral part of today's preaching. And our theme today is rejoice. Our insurance is in his assurance. Our theme today is rejoice. Our insurance is in his assurance. Could you please repeat after me? Rejoice.
Rejoice.
Our insurance.
Our insurance
is in his assurance.
is in his assurance.
Yes. I like to play on words a lot whenever I'm given time to preach, because I feel like when I'm motivated to come up with a very catchy theme, it stays. So the theme being rejoice, our insurance is in his assurance. We have three words here, that is rejoice, insurance, and assurance. Now, rejoice is closely tied with the word joy. And what is joy? So joy is an inner contentment and satisfaction in the knowledge of a divine hand that steers all our experiences, both good and bad. So that is joy. That inner contentment that you have, that inner satisfaction that you have, knowing that there's a divine hand that steers all our experiences, both good and bad. Now, rejoice is the verb that actually puts into practice what that joy is. Someone will ask, okay, what about happiness? Happiness, on the other hand, is a state of euphoria in response to a pleasant external stimuli. So then you feel happy because someone said hello to you. You feel happy because you woke up this morning feeling pumped. You feel happy because your spouse may do something nice for you. It's all a state of euphoria that is in response to an external stimuli. Without that pleasant external stimuli, happiness is non-existent. However, joy transcends beyond external stimuli. So let us look at the difference between joy and happiness. Now, joy is in the heart, happiness is in the face. Joy is in the soul, happiness is in the moment. Joy transcends, happiness reacts. Joy is profound and scriptural. Happiness is about. I would like to emphasize on this. Joy is profound and scriptural. That is why in Galatians 5, it says, one of the fruits, or the fruit of the Spirit, one of the characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit is joy. It doesn't talk about happiness. Because happiness is basically a bound. It's here, and then in a few moments later, it's gone. But joy is very profound. Joy is very scriptural. Now, let us look at the other word. So, we've seen joy. Let's look at insurance. What is insurance? Insurance is basically a guarantee or protection against a possible eventuality. So that we have that guarantee, we have that assurance, we have that protection that in the face of a possible eventuality, we are going to be protected. Then comes assurance. So what is assurance? It is a promise, it is a pledge, a word of honor. So looking at these three definitions, how do we then paraphrase our theme today? So in summary, the theme being rejoice, our insurance is his assurance, simply means that we should have an inner contentment in the knowledge that a divine hand that guarantees, in spite of all our experiences, is based on a promise. So then that hand that guarantees, we have assurance that we are assured of that hand that guarantees to protect us in spite of all our experiences. And that is based on a promise. So our central theme today will be taken from Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 16 to 19. Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 16 to 19. Before we read the word, I just want to give a prelude to the book of Habakkuk, just to give us some context as to why Habakkuk 3 is very important in a Christian's life. So in Habakkuk 1, we see a prophet who tries to question the wisdom of God as to why something is happening. He asks God certain questions, and then God also gives him certain answers. Now, the people of Israel, or God's people, have neglected God. They are living their way. And God has intended to punish his people by subjecting them to people who are even more wicked than his own people. And here we see Habakkuk questioning the wisdom of God as far as that is concerned. In Habakkuk chapter 2, we see God further promising Habakkuk that he's actually going to give the captives of Israel their due punishment. In Habakkuk chapter 3, we see Habakkuk move from a state of questioning God's wisdom to a state of complete faith and trust in the wisdom of God. That is the prelude to the whole book of Habakkuk. So let us read Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 16 to 19. So it says, "So I have heard, and my heart pounded, my lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept in my bones, my legs trembled, yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us." 17. "Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive tree fails, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen, and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights." Amen.
Amen.
Now, we live in a day where prosperity has become the order of the day. Most of us like to hear the aspect of prosperity. Okay, want to give your life to Christ, God is going to do this for you, God is going to do that for you. And so it makes us not really be equipped during the times of troubles, because we already have the mindset when we are a Christian, everything is going to be okay for you. But the book of Habakkuk challenges us to put our faith in God, even in trying times. So we see that Habakkuk started his journey by questioning God, but he ended his journey by putting his complete trust in God. So I want us to dive into these verses, pick them apart, and then try to see the hidden gems behind these verses. There are going to be three main things to be talking about. The very first one is wait patiently for God, even when you are afraid. Wait patiently for God, even when you are afraid. And that is taken from verse 16. So I read again. It says, "I heard, and my heart pounded, my lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept in my bones, and my legs trembled." That is a very graphic scene of somebody expressing the fear they felt in the face of imminent doom and danger that was assured of him through prophecy. Now, what did Habakkuk hear? Habakkuk, or God told Habakkuk of the coming invasion by the Babylonians. God also described the arrogance, violence, and the cruelty of these invaders in chilling detail to Habakkuk. God also told Habakkuk about the great and awesome judgment he will bring on the Babylonians, and indeed upon all the nations of the earth that refuse to submit to God. So this was what necessitated the fear in Habakkuk, because it was assured by God that these things are going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to happen. Let us reflect on our own lives. In our darkest moments, when all hope is lost, when our very existence is being threatened, when all we hold dear and true seems to be stripped away from us, what do we feel? We feel fear, we feel desolation, we feel anger, we feel frustration. Is it normal to feel this way? Yes, it is. It's absolutely normal. Why? Because we are human with deep-seated emotions. So it is very, very normal to feel fear. It's very normal to feel desolate. It's very normal to feel sadness. Someone may ask, why? Let us look at Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, when Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That verse in itself is telling us that God recognizes the fact that in our goings and comings, human as we are, we're going to feel weak, we're going to feel disturbed, we're going to feel disappointed. But Jesus is telling us that what? We should come to him and you will give us rest. So it is perfectly normal to feel fear. It's perfectly normal to feel burdened. But the most important thing we need to understand here is, despite being battered by the vicissitudes of life, it is basically a feeling. And that should not be misconstrued or misunderstood to be our reality. It is just a feeling. It is just a feeling. So, in the face of feeling, what do we do? And that is what Habakkuk says in 3 verse 16b. I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. So typically, when we wait on God, we are seeking Him, we are trusting Him, and we are praying to Him. Now, waiting patiently on God suggests an intention and resolve to be inured and outlast our sensibilities in our desire for a response. That is a mouthful. So waiting on God basically is an intention, okay, to be inured. So we are not feeling what our sensibilities are telling us. We are desperate, we are weak, we are afraid, but we are not subjecting our feelings to what it is we are actually feeling. All in the desire for what? That response. That is the aspect of what? Waiting on God. So the very first point is, looking at Habakkuk 3 verse 16, it says, wait patiently for God, even when you are afraid. The second aspect, which is quite a lot, is choose to rejoice in God, even when everything in life goes wrong. We have to choose, it's a choice, to rejoice in God, even when everything in life goes wrong. And this is taken from verses 17 to 18, which is, though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes in the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no fruit, though there are no sheep in the pen, and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in my Savior. Now, let us break this into 3 scenarios. I think Habakkuk was a very good poet because there are some hidden gems in verse 17 to 18 that I would bring to bear. 3 scenarios are captured here. That is, 1, trust in God when there is no visible sign for hope in the future. We have to rejoice in God. 2, when all we hold dear in the present fails us. And then 3, when what we have been trusting from the past even fails us. And these are exemplified in verse 17. Now we'll look at the very first one, when there are no signs of hope. We can see it from the first statement, though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes in the vines. The budding of the fig tree purports some assurance of the fact that that fig tree is going to be fruitful. But here Habakkuk says that though that fig tree does not bud, he will still trust in God. What are we looking at? There are so many times whereby we ask God, God, we have dreams, we have aspirations. We don't see any sign. God, can you just show me a particular sign? That's indicative of the fact that my dreams and my aspirations are going to come to fruition. But we don't get those signs. Habakkuk is telling us to still trust in God, to still trust in His saving grace, to still exemplify that joy. We need to choose to be joyful, even when there are no signs that our dreams and aspirations are going to come into fruition. The second aspect has to do with the fact that when all that we hold present fails us, and that is taken from the phrase, though the olive crop fails, and the field produces no food. That is in our present. So we go to the farm, we farm. But even in the field, we are seeing that all that we have grown, there are no signs of produce. That is in our present. So then all our efforts in trying to secure that future that we want, it could be in our marriages, it could be in our relationships, it could be in our academics, it could be in our finances, it could even be in our spiritual lives. All our efforts just go down the drain. There are no signs of assurance. It's all disappointment. It's all failure. Habakkuk is telling us to choose to remain joyful in that saving grace of God. Finally, when all that we have trusted in the past also fails us, that can be taken from the phrase, though there are no sheep in the pen and cattle in the stalls. Now, how does this reflect our past? Sheep and cattle are basically kept as reserves. So, when all our reserves are depleted, in terms of monetary wise, you realize that when your bank account is depleted, when your credit card is depleted, when the successes you have chalked in the past is meaningless to trying to even get something, some assurance in the future. When all hope is lost, we can't rely on family members, we can't rely on friends. What do? Habakkuk is telling us to be joyful. Send us to be joyful. Yes. And the third point has to do with the fact that we need to find strength in God to scale the heights even when we are down. We need to find strength in God to scale the heights even when we are down. And this is taken from verse 19 that says, "The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to go on the heights." So now we see that Habakkuk, having talked about the fear and being patient in waiting on God, having talked about these three scenarios where there's no sign for future salvation, whatever we are trusting in the present fails us. The things we have even chopped and achieved in the past is meaningless to our very existence now and in the future. Habakkuk says in verse 19 that we need to find strength in God. We need to find strength in God. And that is very typical in the sense that we should not rely on our own strength. We should not rely on our own strength. That is very typical of the deer. The deer has the capacity to jump greater heights. So Habakkuk is saying that even in all these trials and tribulations, God is still going to give me the feet of a deer to scale the heights. That is what we should encourage ourselves in during our trials and tribulations. 2 weeks ago, during the youth week, we looked at Isaiah, where we made emphasis on Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, that says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." So this is very, very indicative of the fact that in our trials and tribulations, we need to trust in the saving grace of God. So this morning, we've talked about three things. That is one, we need to wait patiently for God, even when we are afraid. Secondly, we need to choose to rejoice in God, even when everything in life goes wrong. And here, when we look at verse 17 to 18, Habakkuk talks about when there's no signs for the future being nice, or then when everything we hold or everything we are trusting in the present is failing us, when our past achievements pale in comparison or are meaningless to securing a future for us. All these were captured in figurative speeches in verse 17. And in verse 18, Habakkuk still says, yet we should rejoice in God. Then finally, he talks about drawing strength in our trials and tribulations. We need to rely on the saving grace of God. We do not need to rely on ourselves. And he makes a clear example about the deer scaling the heights. And we can also draw some inspiration from Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. That talks about those who trust in God shall renew their strength. So, this morning, how do we exercise our faith? That is like bringing the message to an end. I want us to reflect on this particular question. How do we exercise our faith during the worst of times? One, we need to wait patiently on God. Two, we need to make that decision to choose to remain joyful in the Lord. And then three, we need to find strength in God. So here we see that Habakkuk began his journey with a lot of questions. Does God care? Is God fair? Is God there? But instead of running away from God with his questions, he kept bringing his questions to God and finding answers that he needed. Habakkuk began his journey in the valley of doubt. But he ended his journey scaling the heights with God with the feet of the deer. God promises us in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 30, that you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. And so this morning, I want to encourage us that wherever we may be in our own personal journey, from doubt to faith, I want to encourage us to keep seeking God, keep coming to Him with your doubts and with all your questions. And just as Habakkuk exemplified, the no-nonsense kind of faith, the faith that is indicative of, in spite of all things, I am still trusting in God. That is a kind of faith I challenge each and every one of us today to have. It is not that easy, but it is worth it. So that is the message for today. I want us to close our eyes and meditate on the word that has come.